The good thing is that there is a solution. It's also easy to get attached to that darkness. One of the reasons that people replay stories in their head all the time is because it becomes part of their identity. I had a very profound resentment towards the Catholic Church for a very long time. And I went through this process where it seemed spontaneous, but all of a sudden the resentment was gone. And I felt lost and I felt despondent because all of a sudden there was this space that was occupied by this resentment. Now it's open. It was as if I had to re-identify why show up, because within 3 minutes I would have been able to introduce my resentment into the conversation.
The Vidal Speaks podcast.
Episode 46, Frank Ferrante, a complete transformation on a plant-based diet. Welcome to Vidal Speaks. My name is Deborah Vidal, former 11-year LPGA golf pro turned classical homeopath, certified plant-based nutritionist, and wellness coach. Each week here on Vidal Speaks, we bring you knowledge, inspiration, or natural remedies to help you take charge of your health and feel your best. I believe health is freedom and knowledge is power, so tuning in each week will give you the power to take steps towards freeing yourself from the chains that hold you back from having the energy to do all you want in life. No matter where you are in your journey of wellness, Vidal Speaks can help. I promise. Welcome back, everyone. Vidal here. I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. We sure did. We had a lovely vegan feast. It's always so much food. Even if you don't like to eat a lot, there's just so many dishes, and having a little of everything is still so much food. But I love making those healthy plant-based holiday meals. I make this amazing tofu turkey, and I learned it from a cooking class that I took so many years ago with this well-known chef. I've made it for so many Thanksgivings and Christmases now. It's really delicious. It's easy now, though, because you can just buy boxed vegan tofu turkey if you want to. So plant-based holiday meals are not that difficult anymore. But I like making my own because I fill it with my own stuffing. And stuffing is kind of the key to a fantastic holiday meal, isn't it? So now we move deeper into the holiday season. This is my favorite time of year, but it needs to be chilly, and we've had these horrible heat waves the last month. So now that it's getting cooler, maybe I can start really enjoying my holiday season. Well, today's show is a great motivator for all of us because it shows that we all have the ability to transform and heal not only our health issues and our weight problems, but also our emotional pain. I think many times we can't realize how much we're blocking ourselves from living the life we really want. It's so easy to go through life blaming others for all that has gone wrong. But that just traps us in a place where there's no freedom, and the possibilities seem so much less from there. Once we take responsibility for all that has happened to us, even when we feel it is something done 100% by somebody else, if we can own that, then we open the door for goodness and miracles to happen. I really believe that. Every exchange we have with any relationship in our life, it's a two-way exchange. We bring our own energy or vibes, our own view on the world, and our own expectations. And yes, that's even when we think we don't have any expectations, but we usually do. Most importantly, we have free choice. So if we don't like the life we're living, then we can choose at any moment to make changes, whether they're big or small. You can live the life you want if you can let go of the fear of change, or let go of things in general, and just begin to stop doing the things that don't feel right to you. You can't live your life only for what others want or expect. I once heard that they measured the vibrations of certain emotions, and the one that got the highest score was joy. Only you can create the life you want to live, and only you can give that away to others by not making the choices that support what you want in life. You guys know that by now. I'm a freedom-loving person. And I've made choices in my life like leaving a marriage, even at the cost of losing everything I owned. I changed my career, sold my house and moved to start over other places a few times. We have only one life, and I personally believe in following the path that feels right and brings you real happiness. But I don't mean you should run away from situations just when they get tough. I'm not saying this at all. But at some point, if a situation or a circumstance is not serving you and it's making you sick, then you need to take some action to change that. Joy heals. Laughter heals. Passion heals. And today is one of those great stories. It's about a man that had a really bad start in life. And with that, I mean he had a very abusive father. And early on, he got into drugs and a life that helped him escape all of his pain. But one day, when he was searching for a connection with a real person, he walked into a restaurant not knowing that his whole life was about to change. You need to watch the movie to understand what happened. And the movie is called May I Be Frank, so please watch it. But you'll see how meeting these people this day changed his entire future and his life. And after doing that movie, he actually was in another movie called Hungry for Change. So you need to watch both of those movies, May I Be Frank and Hungry for Change. But the May I Be Frank movie is a story all about the transformation that he went through. And this interview is about that journey. I've included a link in the show notes if you want to rent the movie on Amazon to watch it. So let me tell you a little bit about Frank Ferrante now. This is what Frank says about himself. I was born on August 26, 1951. According to my astrological chart, peace and harmony are my battle cry. Talk about a perfect setup for contradictions. Apparently, I'm also flashy but not gaudy, and I prefer to dress elegantly. Obviously, my sartorial preferences reflect my greater spiritual depth. I have been, in no particular order, a New York City cab driver, scrap metal hauler, dishwasher, census taker, mail boy, ditch digger, bouncer, illegal narcotics distributor, general contractor, actor, radio announcer, and carpenter. I am also an avid reader, seeker of God, weight gain, weight loss, aficionado, ex-pot smoker, alcoholic, junkie, speed freak, raw foodist, vegan, lover, hater, father, husband, grad student, good guy, bad guy, and social activist. I received my high school diploma when I was 51. I would have done it when I was younger, but I was busy. Early in this century, I was admitted to UCSB, where I earned a BA in history. I then entered an MA program in the Humanities Department at San Francisco State University to study a lifelong fascination in the subject. I'm particularly intrigued by the migration of cultures, people, and souls. As the subject of the documentary May I Be Frank, I have become a spokesperson for personal transformation and weight loss. My experience dealing with these struggles from a holistic perspective compels me to speak about the power of transformation that rests in all of us. I am not an expert, nor do I have the answer. I have witnessed the indisputable fact that we are all connected. What we do can and will make a difference. I have learned that the three most important things a man can say are, I don't know, would you please help me, and I love you. Okay, you guys ready? This time I think you can really sit back and relax, but you're going to get into this one because it's very interesting. So here we go. Let's go meet Frank Ferrante. Hey, Frank, welcome to the Vidal Speaks podcast.
Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I know somewhere in this interview, I am going to use a line, may I be frank, with one of my questions, but it's not going to be so soon yet. So why don't we start with you telling the listeners a little bit about your movie?
Well, about a few years ago, I was about 300 pounds, more or less, and very depressed, and well, all the attendant things that you have when you're obese. I was just really miserable and lonely and really feeling like life was over. And in my mind, I knew if something had to change. And if it didn't, that it wasn't like I was going to die, because when you're that miserable, death looks sort of like a comfort.
Yes.
And not that I was particularly suicidal or anything, but if someone would have said to me, hey, listen, man, you got 15 minutes left to live and then you're gone, I'd think, oh, great. Why do we have to wait that long? I'm ready now.
Wow.
And I was also very lonely, and I'm a social person. And anyway, so that's the condition I was in San Francisco at the time. I was living in San Francisco, and my cousin Michelangelo was ill, and I was going to go rent some foreign Italian tapes because he was Italian. I was going to rent some tapes. I'm dating myself, and go hang out with him. I normally didn't go to this particular neighborhood that had this store. And in the distance, I saw a sign. It said Cafe Gratitude. And I thought, wow, Cafe Gratitude. Now, in the AA world, gratitude is a central virtue, right? A grateful heart will not drink and all that sort of thing. So I thought somebody from AA was being clever, right? They opened up a coffee shop calling it Cafe Gratitude. So I figured I'm going to get my tapes and I got to go to this place, right? It was a dreary San Francisco evening. It was February, and it was foggy, and there was a mist on the ground, and the air was chilly and damp. The atmosphere was a direct reflection of my internal landscape at the time. So I go to this place, and it was warmly lit. There weren't that many people in there, but it was warmly lit. And it reminded me of a story out of Hemingway, a well-lighted place. A warm, well-lighted place was a short story. I open the door, the bell tinkles, and all of a sudden I'm met with a barrage of salutations. Hi, welcome, glad you're here. So, glad you can make it. Meanwhile, in my house, I was so lonely, I would ring my doorbell to hear what a visitor would sound like, right? So I go into this place and I'm looking around, and it's really warm. It's well lit, but it doesn't look like a coffee shop. And I'm looking around, and there's no coffee machine. There's no espresso machine. As a matter of fact, there was no stove. And I must have had a little bit of a perplexed look in my face, but I went to shake the guy's hand, and he's standing there greeting me. And I said, I had to have a cup of coffee in Cafe Gratitude. I figure somebody here is in recovery. And he smiled at me and said, we're all recovering from something, aren't we? So
what a good line.
I immediately knew he was not in the 12-step world, and figured he smoked a joint before going to work. And so I'm looking around, and I have this perplexed look on my face, because there's nothing that resembles a coffee shop. And he says, well, we're a raw food and vegan restaurant. And my first thought was, raw food? How do you cook that? And so I started frequenting the place, because people were very friendly. I get, this is all part of the movie thing. Yeah. But people were very friendly, and
they are. We have one here.
Yeah, they're very friendly, and that's what was really, I was really hungry for connecting, right? And so they were very friendly and very warm. And so I started going there, I started going there a lot. And I wasn't really into the food or anything. It wasn't like I had this conversion. I would sit there and I would order the food. But then I would promptly go, and after hanging out there, I'd go to the nearest either all-you-can-eat Indian buffet restaurant, or have chicken and ribs, because at 300 pounds, you need more than leaves to walk around. So,
right. So you were really doing it for the emotional connection.
Right. And so Cafe Gratitude used to have this thing where they ask you a question of the day, which was supposed to inspire meaningful conversation. So they... for example, what inspires you? Who inspires you? What does love mean to you? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, when I was there, they said, what's something you want to do before you die? And my response was, I want to fall in love one more time before I die. But I don't think it's going to happen the way I feel, and the way I look, and the way I feel about myself. Apparently, this inspired this guy, right? The owner's son of this place. Unbeknownst to me, they wanted to do a film, but they were looking for the right person.
Interesting. Right? I didn't know that.
And one day I go back. Yeah, I go back, and I'm sitting at the table, and Ryland, the kid that was talking to me, he said, "Hey Frankie, you know that movie Super Size Me?" I said, "Well, yeah, that's where that young guy eats fast food for a week and a month and gets really sick." He goes, "Yeah, well, we have an idea. We want to do something like the opposite of that. We want to take a guy who's not well," which was a rather generous description for my condition at the time. "And we want to take a guy who's not well and feed him this food for X amount of time, go to holistic health practitioners and colonics and cleanses and stuff like that. We want to we want to film it and we want you to be the guy.
Wow.
And I didn't think anything of it because here's this young, 20-something kid, millennial with tight black skinny jeans.
Right.
And I didn't take it seriously. I said, sure, why not? Whatever. And next thing I know, things start to get in motion. And, they didn't have a camera. I had the most filmmaking experience because I had seen the most movies. Nobody had any filmmaking experience. We didn't have a camera. We didn't have any money. And yet I'm led to believe at this point in my life that this entire project was light driven because of that.
Yeah.
And it's a testament to idealism.
Exactly. Because it's really well done. You wouldn't know that.
And so thus began this journey into this new aspect of my life.
God, little did you know what you were getting into, because the movie shows your really down periods of that time. Wow.
And I've come to realize that I'm just like everybody else. There's so many people.
There's so
like
many.
That. I just happen to be the guy that got taped. Someone told me once that Mandela says that sometimes God sneaks behind you, taps you on the shoulder and says, tag, you're it.
Yeah, that's a good line.
And I was tagged. I didn't look for this or plan for this, but all of a sudden I was called to be in this movie, and from having a very, very dark and violent and crazy past to be a guy that talks about the mind, body, spirit connection to health and wellness.
Yeah.
And no one is more surprised than me. My journey has been to accept that role.
Right. Because it's a role of inspiring so many others. And you feel if you didn't come from there and you came from a really violent, difficult life, sometimes it makes you feel you don't earn the right to go be the person to help other people. But my gosh, anybody has that right. We all can inspire people. And I think exactly what you said, I felt too. And I say this to people every day. Anybody can change. A lot of the people I interview, whether it's them overcoming cancer or doing some miraculous things, they all seem to say the same thing. And that's, if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Right.
That's how they feel at the end. So they too didn't feel so special, but yet they're the ones that overcame some horrible disease or transformed their life in some way. And it's true. We all really can do it. And it's such an important role, Frank, because there are so many people in the same situation as you. Today, the world is really sick and not very happy.
Well, from my observations, I think leaders are important. I think they serve a very important function. I think it's also important to remember that they're human beings and put their pants on one leg at a time. I also think that there are the minions, so to speak. And those people are the people that have gone through this and as a result have a language that comes with that experience.
Yes. That
gives people the hope. Because what I feel that I do is I reflect possibilities.
Yes.
I'm not a guru.
True. Yeah.
I'm not,
but sometimes the possibilities feel like they're possibilities because it's actually happened.
Right. You can see it.
Just to relate this to golf, which is so materialistic than what you're talking about.
Well, no.
But I teach people and they will talk about Tiger Woods' swing or Phil Mickelson or whatever, and they'll never experience that guy's swing. But if they go see a woman golfer, a good woman golfer, or something that they can relate more to, or if they watch a match between somebody, or I show them something in their swing, they get it. You can want to be the superstar guru, the health expert that talks about everything, but until you sit down face to face with a person that tells you this is what happened to me, that feels make-believe, the other stuff, until you actually can meet somebody that's done it and you can tell them all the hell you went through, but how great it was to come out the other side. That's what gives people hope.
Right.
That the ordinary person has done it.
Well, look at the people that we celebrate, or some of the films. Look at this, like, for example, It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
Right. Now, some people might say it's a hokey film. I personally think that it's a beautiful film.
That's
and
a great
I never
film.
get tired of watching it. And it just shows that Joseph Campbell said all stories are essentially the same. It's this struggle where, you have this internal struggle and you come out the other side. It's the whole lotus metaphor, right? The lotus comes from mud and muck. And then what happens is through that growth, it surfaces where not only is it fragrant, but the petals resist contamination.
Yeah, and we all have that inside, but some people never get the opportunity to let it come out.
Some people die.
That's what I mean. They really don't experience it.
I think it was Benjamin Franklin that said some people die at 25, but they don't get buried until they're 70.
Well, I was thinking about that, how you were describing your life. You were saying if someone gave you 15 minutes for death, you'd say, do I have to wait that long? It would have really been easier to die than to live with chronic unhappiness, chronic health issues, chronic hating yourself, chronic not being able to love yourself, you can't love anybody else until you love yourself. If you're in a place like that, what you really are kind of, what is the point of living? There's so many people though in that position. It's so sad.
Yep.
So that's why your story's so inspirational.
And the good thing is that there is a solution. And it's really hard. It's also easy to get attached to that darkness, right? I mean, one of the reasons that people replay stories in their head all the time is because it becomes part of their identity. I mean, I had a very profound resentment towards the Catholic Church for a very long time. I went through this process where it seemed spontaneous, but all of a sudden the resentment was gone. Mm-hmm. And I felt lost. And I felt despondent because all of a sudden there was this space.
Yeah, that you're not familiar with.
And that was occupied by this resentment. Now it's open. It was as if I had to re-identify how I show up, because within 3 minutes I would have been able to introduce my resentment into the conversation. Yeah. Right. And enroll you in my resentment. Right. And that was gone. And so I had to grow.
Yeah, and it's part of our identity, and sometimes I see this all the time in my practice. People use their sickness as their identity. So they have MS or they have some horrible disease, right? And I was actually just watching a TED Talk about a woman who had recovered. She was actually a minister who goes in the church to talk to people dying from cancer, and she then got cancer herself and got treated like all the other patients that she was preaching to, but she kind of resented being considered like a cancer survivor. She felt like, why should that be my identity? That's not who I am. Okay, yeah, I survived cancer, but that's not how she wants to be identified. And she felt like her talk was all about, you have to get beyond that. It's okay to say you're a cancer survivor and everything, but if it becomes your MO for everyday life, you're using something as your identity that you're blocking, and you're not allowing you to fully live your life and accept other things. And I see that all the time with medical diagnoses. And there are some patients that you really can't get well no matter what you do, because the identity of their disease is so strong that they're not willing to let that go. And maybe it's because of what you said. Maybe the unknown of what life would be like without that disease is so scary for them that it's easier to hold on to the known, which is so horrible, right?
Most people would rather they opt for the
familiar,
the misery of the familiarity, so the anxiety of the unknown. And I really agree with you. And if you don't mind, I can tell you a quick story about that. One of the things people often say, I'm in recovery. I'm in recovery, right? They have a thing, a 12-step thing, and they had an addiction. I have really shifted my view about that. I am no longer in recovery. I have recovered, which, by the way, is what it says in literature in the beginning. We are a group of 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, or something like that. And I identified myself as an alcoholic, as a drug addict, that was who I was. That was who I was. And every time I went to a meeting, my name is Frank. I'm an alcoholic. And I had an incident in Mexico. I was at a retreat. I was one of the facilitators at this retreat. We did a screening and a talk on forgiveness. This young lady wanted to talk to me about something that was going on in her marriage. It was in Tulum, and it was on the beach, very beautiful. Went next door. There was a restaurant on the beach, and she ordered something, and I ordered a sombrero, which is a pitcher of mixed fruit juice, right? Because I looked on the menu and you got something non-alcoholic. And so we're talking, and there was a pitcher, and it really tasted terrible. It tasted like kombucha, which I hate. And everybody always asks, it's like a political thing. Why do you hate that? Like, you shouldn't be hating that. You're a spokesman for wellness. I can't stand kombucha.
Doesn't matter. You don't
tastes
like
like
it?
vinegar to me. I don't like it.
It does.
I make it a salad dressing. But anyway, I pay, it's $15. I'm going to drink it so I drink this whole thing. The check comes. The check is $165. And I said, Senora, es un problema aquí. It's like, and he goes, I said, I ordered a sombrero. He goes, oh no, you had a bottle of champagne. There was a bottle of champagne.
Oh my God.
In that picture. And I flipped out. I got really, really upset. I had spent over 1989 was the last time I had a drink. Even my mouthwash is non-alcoholic. I was like really like an evangelist, right? So I'm flipped out. There's nobody to talk to there. There's this one guy who was a devotee of, and a student of Byron Katie. He really had his thing together. And there's a German guy, Mirko. And I'm like really beside myself. And as I'm telling him, and I'm very animated, the more animated and agitated I got, the calmer. And when I finished my thing about how, what am I going to do? How could I have this in my system? And he looked at me and he said, did it ever occur to you that maybe the universe is inviting you to engage in a different conversation about who you are? He says, you look at you. He says, you didn't even get a buzz. He says, you haven't had a drink in 28 years. And I didn't. He says, that's how strong your mind is.
Right.
And when he said, maybe you're cured.
Right.
Maybe you're not an addict anymore. That is fundamentally against anything that's preached.
You're taught,
in the 12,
of course.
And when he said that, I was scared. When he said that, it actually frightened me. But there was nothing to do except be at the beach. There was nothing else to do.
Right.
And I had to digest. I had to let this go through me. There was nobody to call. I had to process this. And for the first time in my life, it was a way of seeing myself other than in this darkness.
Yeah.
And it was and I started looking at it like religion. Fundamental religion scares you into not doing something because of the afterlife.
Yeah.
As opposed to not doing something because of the intrinsic benefit that you receive from
It's
doing the right thing.
Yes.
And I thought, it's like they're scaring me because like if I'm this close to a drink, man, and I'm not.
Right.
And it doesn't mean I'm going to go drink because I'm not. Is it going to improve my life? No, but I'm choosing not to.
Right.
So when I go to somewhere, to a meeting, and I hear somebody say, well, I'm getting with a lot of years and saying I'm getting divorced and it really kicks up my alcoholism, that's not what it's kicking up. It's kicking up other feelings of sadness, regret, betrayal, whatever it is, but it has nothing to do with alcoholism.
Yeah.
At all.
Right.
I haven't had a drink since 1989. So whatever is happening to me today is either a result of a call for love or an expression of love or the expression of an unhealed wound. Because if I'm dopey today, it's not because I'm an alcoholic. It's because I'm being dopey. Anyway, so that was just
that's so true because that was and that is many people who've gone through recovery. And I'm not saying that it's bad because there's probably a period of time that's very helpful so that they don't go drink, right? That they can feel like my identity is I'm an ex-addict and I'm in recovery. But there comes a point, as in any growth in life, as a disease, when you've treated the disease in a natural way and using nature's law and you haven't suppressed it and you have no more symptoms of it, you can say you're cured.
You're not in recovery
You're not
anymore.
in recovery anymore. You're not living in fear that you still have it because you're symptom free and it's many years now and you can feel strong enough to say, I'm cured.
Well,
so that's an important point.
Very often diabetes is used as a metaphor. And, if you really want to carry that over, right, like people that put their diabetes into remission, right, and now live a normal life, don't go around saying, hi, my name is Frank, I'm a diabetic. What they do is, they live a lifestyle that enables them to be free of this ailment. They just have to stay away from the donuts.
Right.
Right. And that's it, and like I could be, like I know I'm not just the only one, but guys, people like me could be bartenders at your son's wedding or something. It's not a big deal.
Right.
It's not, it's not a push-pull thing.
Yeah.
Anymore.
Right.
And
right.
people ask me all the time. I went to Italy 2 years ago and people say, how can you go to Italy and not drink wine? Like that's the only thing to do in Italy.
Right.
Not to mention the 3,000 years of history and,
of course.
and the food and all of that.
Crazy.
How can you be in Italy or France without drinking the wine? It's kind of absurd.
Yeah, it is kind of absurd. I was very curious in the movie because of being my profession in healthcare field, what you started out with. So were you taking you were diabetic, right? Pre-diabetic.
Just about. I was on the border.
And you had hepatitis C and you were taking medications.
I was on interferon and ribavirin. I was on hepatitis. I had hepatitis C. I was taking antidepressants. I tried to get a list because I wanted to put that in the book. I couldn't. It was really hard. I, for some reason, couldn't get the information. But I couldn't even remember all the medications I was taking.
Did you have high blood pressure?
I don't remember, actually.
Wow,
I probably did.
That's the most amazing symptom of all. The fact that you can't remember shows how messed up you were with all the medications. I mean, that's crazy. But what a way to start like this night. I mean, like I said earlier, you had no idea what you were going to go through, because to put someone in that state with all those medications and all those health issues, and raw food is such a strong, like, vital force, all life energy, feeding your cells. You're going to push out so much toxin so fast. And the movie shows it because you went through hell. What was those first, I know it shows a little bit in the movie, but wow, what was that first week like? That must have been like you couldn't even get out of bed.
Well, the first week was just 12 ounces of wheatgrass a day, which I couldn't stand.
Oh, I can't stand wheatgrass.
So the first week was liquid. It was 4 ounces of wheatgrass and some smoothie, which I don't know what was in there, but it was a smoothie, and that was it for a week, and along with colonics.
Oh, that was hilarious. But what a great idea, though. That was really smart of them to do that, because really, to cleanse the colon and the bowel while you're doing such an incredible, difficult, hard thing on the body, it's almost becoming such a stress to put the body from the way you were eating before to that diet. That was such a helpful thing. I honestly was so relieved to see that they recommended that to you, because believe it or not, it would have been a lot harder without that.
What I like to stress in my work is not just the nutritional thing. There's folks like you got that down, and we all have our different strengths and expertise. What I really like to focus on is when I talk about this stuff is the inside job. The way you describe raw food, obviously someone who is in it, right? You know what you're talking about. I could talk about that peripherally, but what I really get into is what is it that got me to those places in the first, to begin with? What is it that led to those decisions? That's where I like to go. Because what you're doing is that part is really important. But that's not what really moves me. What is it? What is it that calls me? Is like really uncovering the source of that anguish, and to resolve those issues, whatever they are. And
so emotional, mental stuff.
Right. So for example, the thing about not being good enough, right? It's like everybody's got that, but it manifests differently in different people. And it's interesting to me how the very thing that our souls yearn for, our ego, is a complete impediment to that. Mm-hmm. So, for example, people want to be loved. So what do? They're groping for the house, the car, the girl, the job, the money, whatever it is, to try to, I'm going to bring home this trophy so somebody will love me.
Right.
Not that those things don't have a place in the three-dimensional universe. But without depth and substance.
Yeah, right? Exactly. It's nothing. It's all material.
Without emotional intelligence and compassion.
Yeah.
Those things become meaningless, which is being revealed to us daily on the radio.
Yes.
But we're not going to go there. But all that stuff that's happening around us politically is a reflection of our consciousness. And I believe we're at a choice point. And I'm not saying one side is light and one side is dark. At least one side is a little lighter.
Right.
But it's a reflection of our consciousness. This is where we are.
This is where we are.
None of this is an accident. And so we're looking at our own inner conflict.
Now, I'm curious, though, when you speak about that, about feeling like this, I know you had this strong desire to be loved again. But one thing I've seen, sometimes what happens, the very thing we want the most, we make sure we don't get it. So in your case, like in the movie, and I see this with a lot of women who maybe they were sexually abused when they're young. So what do? They eat, and they get to 300 pounds so that no one will ever love them and they won't be abused or have to have a sexual relationship with a man, because by eating themselves to 300 pounds, they feel protected.
It's also a control issue.
Yeah, but it's a mechanism to make sure that they're not going to get the very thing that they want in some way. It's such a self-destruction. And, you know, the thing you were craving for, you were actually in a way making sure it was never going to happen. But yet it's what your body wanted. It's wanted love.
Right.
It wanted someone to care about. It wanted some social interaction. But yet you stood in the movie and you said, I don't like myself. I don't love myself. How could anyone else love me? I don't like what I look like. I can't look at myself in the mirror. All that's so true. So many people are in that position today. It's not just learning to like yourself how you are. It's about making some changes that can make you also feel better about how you feel waking up in the day. It's not just about looking in the mirror and learning to accept yourself as 300 pounds. That's important, I'm sure. But it's also about making some changes in your life that maybe could make you have more energy or want to exercise or want to feel happy around other people or make some steps to go to the gym or steps to go to a relationship or whatever it is that floats your boat, right? It's just, so I think it's not only just about accepting, but it's about changing and opening yourself to those changes. And that was what I thought was so incredible at the movie, because you came from such a different past. You're like the last person in the world that you would think is going to go on this spiritual journey, this awakening, right?
Because walk into a raw food restaurant.
Right. And it's like, but that's what makes the story so great, because it's the last person in the world that people would think that would have this awakening. And you had this, and you're in this place forever. And you were always constantly growing. But what a gift that you could get there through this really difficult, what was it, 90 days or 30 days?
The film was over 42, but the work took about over a year.
Yeah.
You know, you don't lose 125 pounds.
Now I want to tell you at the end, you know, when they tell you that you relapsed,
right.
Oh, I was crying. I was like, oh no, Lloyd, he relapsed. No, that was like so disappointing, because I was like, wow, like you got so much under control. All your medications were pretty much gone. Your Hep C, you weren't doing any of those drugs, or everything was so good. And then I'm like, no. And then it says in there that you went back on all the medications and you relapsed. And I was like, no, this is supposed to be a happy movie. That's why we watched it. It was later at night. We wanted a happy story. And then the story continues that then you came back. And I think I wanted to talk to you about that. So, A, why did you think you relapsed? And B, what made you come back around, and why was it better the second time around?
Well, the relapse occurred. I was still on medication towards the end of the film. I was almost finished with the protocol of the interferon, and I was prescribed painkillers.
Where in the movie were you prescribed those? Before the movie? The painkillers?
No. That was during, I think. Okay. I was taking them as prescribed, but then at one point I started taking them abusively, and I just started taking them addictively. Oh, opioids? Yes. It started with Vicodin, but by the time I was done, it was 150 milligrams of narco, 100 milligrams of OxyContin, and 100 milligrams of morphine sulfate every day. Oh, my God. And I told the doctor, I said, I don't think it's a good idea to prescribe these. And he said, if you don't follow my protocol, get yourself another doctor. You should have followed his advice. Yeah, I should get yourself another doctor. But as far as the film goes, I think that the relevance of that, because at one point there was a group of the people that marketed The Secret at one point approached us years ago. They said that they liked the film, but they were disturbed about a couple of parts. One of them was that part, the end, and the other part, there's a big argument, a big, like, really loud Puerto Rican Sicilian verbal exchange, and it's upsetting. It's still upsetting to watch for me today. And they said, well, my 3 female colleagues were, really upset by the fight scene. I said, well, obviously they never dated an Italian. That was not really a fight. That was pancakes or waffles as far as I was concerned. They didn't see the fights. But seriously, folks, but the thing is that what's relevant, we decided we weren't going to do that, although it was very tempting to have them market it, but they wanted it completely positive. to me, what is really relevant and courageous as far as the director goes as well, is that life isn't linear.
Right, that's
it's
true.
It's not linear. And the idea of, a guy walks into sounds like the beginning of a joke. Guy walks into a raw food restaurant.
Yeah, right.
Guy walks into a raw food restaurant, meets these guys, goes through some things, and he lives happily ever after. And that's not
life.
Real life.
Yeah.
Real life that's what happens. And we stumble and we fall and we get up. And you watch that throughout life. You watch a toddler. And what do? They start to walk, they fall all the time.
Yeah.
But we as adults, we do that in other ways, spiritually.
A lot of ways, not even spiritually. Look, we get married, get divorced.
Right,
we learn
but
from it.
That's a spiritual journey too.
That's true.
That's really, everything's a spiritual journey.
Yeah, that's so true.
But you don't look at it, a little kid stumbles and falls, you don't say, hey, you little idiot,
You fell. You were walking yesterday, and today you fell.
So you took 3 steps. What's the matter with you? We don't do that.
Yeah.
But we don't do that with children. Well, we tend to be less kind in our journeys.
For sure.
Which isn't to say that you coddle people or anything like that. But but
you still need self-forgiveness.
Yeah. Which is the biggest thing.
That is so hard.
Which is really, ultimately, I think, what the main message of the film.
It's time to take a quick break, and I'd like to ask you guys to please keep sharing the link for this show with your friends. There's a button in the podcast app that you can just click on and a window comes up, and right there you can hit the share button and just send it to a friend. So please try that this week. And thanks to those of you that are supporting the show in all ways that you can, especially by using the Amazon banner. I really appreciate that, right? I got a few nice emails this week from listeners telling me how much they're learning and changing their life, and they're all getting healthier because of this podcast. That means so much to me. So please keep staying in touch. And if you feel so inspired, let me know. And if you have a question, let me know. And I promise I'll get back to you. And also try to do that review in iTunes if you haven't already. I certainly don't understand why iTunes makes it so hard. So many people have not been able to figure out how to do that. But if you can, I really appreciate that. And just use the link in the show notes because it should take you right to the review page. So my tip today is to share with you one of my favorite hot drinks since the fall is here now. It's called Ticino caramel nut flavor. I buy the one in the tea bag form and I add hemp milk to it, and yum. It's so delicious. It has a lot of detox herb in it like chicory and dandelion root, so it's really healthy too. The link's on my product page, so be sure to try it because now is the season for it. Okay, let's get back to the show. Here we go. Okay, so the other thing that I want to get into is your relationship with, did you divorce your wife?
Yeah, we were divorced in 92.
Okay, so in the movie, you guys were already divorced, but you were trying to kind of make peace with the relationship in whatever way that would be. And I'm just curious, how is that today?
Yeah, we did. We made peace. Time and tide, it helps. But I wanted to make peace primarily to reestablish my relationship with my daughter, who at the time was very angry at me. And the way I describe it is that we were all casualties of a divorce. Mm-hmm. A divorce is not a lighthearted thing. There's always casualties.
Yeah.
And sometimes kids feel like if they're loyal to one parent, they're being disloyal to another.
Right.
You know what I mean? So there was that dynamic going on.
And you really desired that because it came out very strong in the movie, how much you wanted to make amends with your daughter.
Right. And eventually, now we talk all the time.
That's great.
We have a relationship that I could have only dreamed of. And she's changed a great deal too. She was like this born again Christian kid, she was, and very, very black and white. And she recently moved from Florida, which is easy to be that way. She moved to Boulder, Colorado.
Wow, cool.
She now has a mohawk. She's into acrobatic yoga, and she went to Burning Man.
Wow. What a transformation.
Wow. Talk about a transformation. I mean, really, it's just like she's incredibly healthy and fit.
Cool.
I mean, she's an acrobat.
Yeah,
and
fantastic.
I think that she's never going to get old. I think she's
Cool.
36, but I wouldn't, if she came into my bar and I didn't know her, I wouldn't serve her.
And your wife, are you guys friends?
Yeah, we're friends.
Your ex-wife,
I mean, we our lives are on different paths,
right.
But certainly we're friendly to each other.
Well, isn't that part of also accepting being divorced, is that you look back and you see how different your life paths are on, and then makes it easier to kind of let that go and allow
Right.
each other
The other
to
thing
keep
is,
fulfilling.
the other thing that you look at, I mean, that occurs to me is the arc of the narrative of my life, and I think of where I was, and I think how much I was when I, all those years ago, 30 years ago, how much I was using and drinking and was just crazy.
I want to talk about that a little because it's not all exposed in the movie, but can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and your life with your parents and just how the abuse started with the drugs, and just, give us a feel for...
In 10 words or less, let's see. Well, my parents came here after World War II from Sicily, and they brought the war with them. In my early years, I grew up in Brooklyn in the 50s, and it was a cross between On the Waterfront, Blackboard Jungle, Goodfellas, and The Godfather. It was a very gritty, colorful, passionate, violent life. And there were fights all the time. There were gangs. They didn't have guns like they do now, but there were gangs. And my parents were fighting all the time. The police were at my house several times a week to pull my parents apart.
Wow.
My father was a very violent, mercurial guy. One day he would embrace me and promise me a bicycle, and the next day beat the living hell out of me and throw me, me and my brother against brick walls and stuff. And that went on all the time. I never knew when I was going to get embraced or get punched out.
Jeez.
And then Catholic school was where I got my spiritual violence, where it was, there were nuns there, and it was every kind of abuse. It was like shaming and corporal punishment, torture, really.
Yeah.
You misbehave, you have to kneel on rice and stuff like that, and really smacking you in front of a whole class of people, in front of the whole lunchroom. And
I'm a Catholic school goer, so
yeah.
I didn't go through that much, but I saw and experienced some of that.
So it was really hard with that kind of foundation to feel like it's okay to be honest about what you think or feel.
Right.
But the thing is that it's really easy and very seductive to talk about the blood and guts of how bad it was. And in a lot of ways, it was really bad. But on the other hand, there were things that came out of it that served me to this day, things that hurt me to this day, but things that served me as well.
Of course.
And so one of them is, learning, for example, my father was a very violent guy, but it was something would spark that, and I would hear it in his voice. And then he would be doing something, and then he would be muttering under his voice. And I knew that this was going to escalate. And at that point, I start to brace myself and look for ways to escape. Well, what that does for me now is when I go into a room, because it made me hypervigilant. Mm-hmm. I was always, my hearing, I could hear in a person's voice almost, I could tell where their vibe is like instantaneously.
Yeah.
Not always.
But you had to be able to do that. It was a survival mechanism.
Now what I do is, like, when I'm talking to somebody, I can really, my antenna, it's like I'm very empathic. I can really pick up on stuff like that. Also, I believed that there was a formula, a way of articulating something, because I would watch TV and I would see, like, say, Perry Mason, and I could see him make his case, and then people would get free. And I thought, well, if I could find the right words to give my parents, maybe I could stop the violence. And so I started reading, and I started reading the encyclopedia. I started at A and worked my way through, looking for a way. What's the formula to get these people to stop fighting and stop hurting us, But as a result of that, I educated myself, and so I started reading really pretty sophisticated books at an early age for survival. I was just trying not to die. Yeah. It wasn't that I was trying to be a big shot, and I quit high school because there was so much violence in my high school, but I kept reading. I didn't get my high school diploma till I was 50.
Wow.
And when the movie was being shot, actually, I was in grad school.
Jeez.
While that was going on.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I wouldn't blame my parents or my environment for my drug addiction. But I have to say that when I started, I was ready.
Well, and you also can't blame them, but you had a good reason to want to escape, and drugs are definitely a form of escape.
Well, what happened was when I first got loaded, and pot was the last thing I tried, by the way. But when I first got high I started out on hard drugs. I mean, I didn't even, I got drunk once, and then the rest of it was hard drugs. What happened when the first time heroin hit me was an exhale. It was a complete exhale for the first time in my life. And I started to think that, in my time, the transition from puberty to manhood was, the group of guys got you loaded and, got you laid, right? And then all of a sudden you're supposed to wake up with a hangover and this is what you're a man. Well, I thought that was it, because I thought that the drugs, not that was it, but the drugs was that transition, because the moment I got high, I thought this was how you got through the rest of life. I could not imagine how I'm going to get through life with the head full of this terror that I had and uncertainty and violence. And how do you do that? And as soon as I got some heroin, I thought,
this is how.
Oh, this is what they were probably going to tell me this when I was 18. Yeah. This is like you get a card somewhere, but that's what happened. And then the way I describe my experience with addiction is I spent the next 25 years chasing 1968.
Yeah.
I spent the next 25 years trying to recreate that exhale.
And have you been able to let go of the regret? Because so many people feel like they've wasted 25 years. Lloyd went through that. He's had in his deep past, he had that. And sometimes he always says, I really wasted so many years. But you are where you are today because of that experience.
I had an experience with Neil Ross, the guy who wrote Conversations with God. I don't know why I always forget his middle name. Neil MacDonald Ross. And we were talking, and he said, I was telling him about this, the regrets. And he said, and people have told me this is where you are, but it never worked for me. Your experience has made you who you are today. And I thought, well, I'm not that crazy about that guy now. And so that never helped me. And he said, you should take yourself out to a nice dinner and celebrate your regrets. Celebrate your regrets. And I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And I thought, and it was different than somebody giving me like the new age thing, you're right, nothing's an accident, you're right, you're where you're supposed to be. And I never quite really bought that either. But when he said, celebrate your regrets, and I thought, and he gave me good reason, because I survived them.
Well, and they're not a regret unless you're on the other side.
And then, they don't serve me. Again, it's like we spoke earlier. They become my identity.
Yeah.
And so and somewhere in there, I felt, because of my wonderful Catholic upbringing, that if I continued to perpetuate the suffering, that somehow I was atoning. And they're two different things. But I also, that's what I believe, that I believe that I didn't have a right not to feel this way.
Exactly.
And I believe that there is a creative force that makes a cell want to, split in half and reproduce and makes human beings want to create. And that energy, that creative force, that spirit, God, whatever word you're comfortable with, is not on a cloud in the north with a yellow pad taking down notes of every time you touch yourself. You know what I mean? It's not, he's not taking, or she, or it is not taking notes about all your transgressions. That's the police.
Yeah.
And that's not the universe. The universe is self-correcting and driven by love. And it's really up to us to accept these gifts that are given to us and honor them, and celebrate them. It's taken me a lifetime to be able to really feel that. I would say it in rebellion and defiance.
Yeah. Right.
But to say it from a heart space is a different thing, because I years ago would say it in defiance.
So now you've been through all this growth. My next question is, so now who is Frank today? Or maybe I should say, may I be frank and ask, who is Frank today?
Well, I'm a regular guy that has a passion for the well-being of others. It drives me. It's not, I heard this wonderful term the other day, reciprocal altruism, which is a succinct way of saying do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Right.
Right. Reciprocal altruism. Who I am today, I'm a work in progress. I'm a flawed human being. I love my friends. I love the people. I love my children. I love participating in the cycle of love. I love having exchanges with other people that are on the path. And I like having exchanges with people that aren't on the path. And I think we all are on the path. We're just in different parts of like the Santiago thing, right? There's some people in France and some people that are on the Pyrenees and some people that are in Spain. Yeah. But they're all on the same path. Yeah. And I'm a guy who's grateful that I not only survived my experience, but I'm able to redeem myself by putting that experience to good use. I'm a writer. Well, what I do, it's funny when people say who they are, but they talk about what they do. But I do. I'm a writer. I'm a storyteller. I'm a father.
And can you look in the mirror and say you love yourself today?
Now I can. Not every day. I mean, there's some days I wake up thinking, man, am I glad they legalized doctor-assisted suicide, because that's going to come in very handy today. And so I have those days. It's not like I've arrived. I have days where I wake up in fear and doubt but I also have a community of people around me, a small group of people that help me to recalibrate my compass and remind me of who I am, and very quickly remind me of who I'm not.
Well, you spoke so deeply in the beginning of the show here about the loneliness. And I think so many people are in that, but our society is also creating that with internet now. It's so easy to just send an email or a, internet birthday card. You don't need to contact people anymore. There's no time for that. Everything's just superficial. A lot of it's about me. People don't take the time to connect anymore. You really have to make room for special people in your life. I'm a person that likes deeper relationships and not just 100 little superficial ones. So,
right. You mean not like your 5,000 friends on Facebook?
Yeah, I've never even became on Facebook until my show, because I have to for my show. But yeah, I rather have a party where everyone can fit around my table. I tell the listeners every week, I want you to pretend you're sitting around the table and we're just having a conversation, because I like the intimacy. I like the closer relationships, but we have to make time for that today, because it is work in a way to do that. But if it's what you crave and what you need, but in some ways, I think we all really need that. We're human beings. Maybe some people like it more than others, but we all really need that. To be isolated is not healthy. It's not healthy. And I could see that in the movie, how much you were really craving this desire. That's why you were going to Cafe Gratitude, because you were getting something out of that connection with those spiritual young people that would feed something to your soul. That's what you were really being fed, was some love from these young people that could offer you something deeper that you never had before. And that became your little taste of what could be. So I so appreciate that you talk about that. And at the same time, I want people out there to know, you have to take small steps to get out of that loneliness. So many people are depressed. So many people. I think every patient I saw was on an antidepressant. It's crazy. And they may numb you and they may take away the crying every day, but most of my patients would tell me, it's still not me. Mm-hmm. It's still not me. And it's learning to get beyond that, to take the little steps to find the special person in your life. It might not be a love affair like you like, but it might be a great person that still can offer you a lot of beauty and love. Love comes in many forms.
Indeed.
So I really, really think your story has so much to offer other people. I'm so happy to hear that you wrote a book and you're speaking and you're, spreading the word, because it's a story about how a person who, had such a rough life that so many of those people fall between the cracks, commit suicide, do destruction, and they die before they're found. And everybody has that pearl inside of them, or that shining diamond. And you were lucky enough to fall into this position to have these people guide you through, and you came through, and maybe you would in another way. We don't know what the future holds, but you certainly came out the other end shining. And
thank you.
It's really wonderful to hear that now you're helping other people, because we all do need to help each other. And I'm trying to do it through my show. You do it through speaking and your book and all the ways you can. Like you said, ordinary conversations. Sometimes you sit down, you just have no idea how you're going to change a person's life. One smile, one sentence,
Indeed.
right? It's so important. So lastly, if you could just give 3 things to the listeners that maybe could make them think about something today, like maybe think about how they could feel better or how they too could transform their life, that they can maybe are feeling how you felt. What 3 things would you say for them to do?
Well, the 3 things to change your life. The first step to changing your life is to be willing. And
For sure.
And sometimes in my case, I had to be I just had to be willing to be willing. And sometimes, even though I didn't believe it, like if there was somebody there in my corner, the best I could do was believe that they believe, even though I didn't believe. So the willingness is the first thing. And then, we talked earlier about how taking action. I remember listening to a radio show, and there was a psychologist that dealt with people with eating disorders, with obesity particularly. And it was an hour show, and never once did she mention physical activity. So I think it's important if there's issues, because if you're obese, there's issues. It's cool. Go to a therapist and talk to her for an hour or him for an hour, but then go to the gym.
Yeah, or go on a hike.
Or do something.
Get a rebounder or something.
Move your body.
Yeah.
And do something. And then for your insides, there's certainly so many things we can cover, meditation and all that stuff. But the other thing is like little things. Like someone once told me, if you really want to feel good, do something nice for somebody today and don't get caught.
That's so great.
And I thought, well, wait a minute. Because if I do something nice, I want it above the fold in the New York Times, because I want you to know how great I am and I want you to like me. What I didn't understand at the time was when I did something for somebody and didn't get caught, that there was an intrinsic value to that I could feel good about feel good about something for the sake of feeling good about it, not getting my reward by announcing it. There's a spiritual text that says, if you seek your reward here, you will get it here. But if you seek your reward in heaven, you'll get it there. In other words, heaven being inside of you, inside your heart. Mm-hmm. And so if I want my ego to be gratified, I'll say, hey, check out what I did.
Right.
And you'll say, wow, you're so wonderful. And my ego will say, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Right.
But if I just hold it inside and let it blossom within this place in my heart right here, it's a much deeper experience.
Yes.
And I'm not wondering about why I'm here or the meaning of life, because I'm experiencing life.
That's fantastic. And I can't end because I know everybody wants to know, how do you eat today?
Oh.
Of course. Everybody has to know. Did you stay raw?
I didn't stay raw, but I eat intelligently. And I guess if I was to categorize it, I lean more toward an Ayurvedic system. Mm-hmm. There's something about, and there's something about that food that feels more than physically nourishing to me.
It's medicine. Their food is medicine.
It's quite astounding. It just, but I had to be clean to be able to experience that.
Yes.
Because while I was toxic, it didn't make a difference. I just wanted to be full.
Right.
When I cleaned up, one could call that weak, right? So I start getting sensitive to things. I'm sensitive to noise. I'm sensitive to chemicals, and before I wasn't. But I wasn't healthy.
Right.
I'm not supposed to enjoy a blasting motorcycle or car going past me, or a sanitation truck, and the smoke should make my eyes red.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But before it didn't. But I was also, not only was I immune to those, not only was I not responding to those toxins appropriately, emotionally, my responses were not in alignment with my heart and soul.
Right. So do you ever eat meat, or is it mostly vegan? I
rarely, once in a while, something calls me and I need to have a piece of fish or something. Mm-hmm. But I like to eat clean, and I eat intuitively now too. That's great. The other thing I was going to say is that you clean up, then your body tells you what you should and shouldn't eat.
Well, when you eat something you don't feel good, it makes you just not want to eat it again. That's the fastest way to eat healthy is just eat healthy long enough that when you eat something bad, your body tells you don't feel good.
After a long time of really clean eating, I was in Kansas City. There was a screening, and after the screening, people like to take you out and stuff. The only thing that was open was a cheesecake factory. And when I was calorically challenged, I had a running love affair with raspberry truffle cheesecake with a softball size whipped cream next to it. And that was my thing. So I thought, well, you know what? I haven't had this in a year and a half. Whatever. Yeah, I'm just going to have it. My weight's good. I'm going to have. So I ordered it. I'm going to have a piece of this cheesecake. And I had 2 bites and I thought I was going to retch. Yeah. I felt like I had lead in my stomach. Yeah. I could not believe, because my mind was remembering the pleasure.
Right.
My mind hadn't caught up with the rest of
it.
And so, so all of a sudden what happens is that, people talk about diets, and which I would, if I were president of the world, I would eliminate that word.
Me too.
But it's a lifestyle shift, but it's what you're bringing in, not so much what you're eliminating. But if you bring in the right stuff, it will edge out the stuff that shouldn't be there.
And all those years when they told us you are what we eat, we just let it go in one ear and out the other.
Yeah,
but it's you eat well, you feel well. And when you eat crap, it's eventually you're gonna pay the price. So it's so true. Anyway, thanks so much for coming here to the Knob, as we call it, the Paramount. We call it at the Knob. But thanks so much for coming to the studio and sharing your story with everyone. And hopefully you'll come back here and have dinner with us, and we'll stay friends.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, Frank.
Arrivederci.
Arrivederci. What a great story. And to see how a life truly can be transformed is such a happy story, because you know where he was headed, right? If he had not walked into that Cafe Gratitude that day, his life would be totally different. We can look back and wonder, what if? But even when we make not so great decisions that cost us some pain and suffering or loss, we really have to know that collectively all of our decisions have made us who we are today. After the interview was over, Frank and Lloyd and I talked, and you could really hear his honesty coming through. Frank lectures all over the world now, and he inspires others to know that they too can heal. He always was true to himself and said, I'm not sure why I'm the expert, but I feel I'm being called to help others. And he did say that it's a process, and every day we need to be able to do our best, but also to be able to forgive ourselves and keep going. It's about trying to make decisions every day that support the ultimate life you want to live. I have learned that when you give out to others, you get 1,000 times more back to you. Being of service is so powerful. We all need to do this in the world because the world needs to heal. I hope you go through the rest of your week feeling inspired after the show today. I sure will. Okay, you guys, you know what time it is, right? It's time to say goodbye. Vidal has spoken. Remember, you heal with a plant-powered diet, homeopathy, and detoxing, of course. Peace. Be healthy. Be free. Live life.